number 26 NC State preview, plus news and notes from across the country on Good Morning College Football. Hello and welcome to episode 76 of Good Morning College Football from CampusToCanton.com. I am Nicholas Ian Allen of CFB Winning Edge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for giving this video a like. Thank you also for subscribing to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel. We can get access to this show 3 times a week, as well as a wide range of content from the good folks at Campus to Canton. Cover college football in general, best ball drafts, the college fantasy football and Debbie version of the game, as well as just tons of information to get you ready for the college football season. Campus to Canton Live, lots of great stuff from Campus to Canton. So do, of course, please check out other videos here on the feed. Also, we very much would appreciate if you would consider becoming a member at CampusToCanton.com. You can join for as little as $2.99 per month, get access to a ton of written content, tools, rankings for all those different versions of college fantasy football, C2C, Debbie. The draft tool is excellent. I see it used in leagues that I'm in, and it's great for the greater college football and college fantasy football community, but it in some instances maybe makes things a little too easy. So that's available to all of our NIL members, the draft tool at CampusToCanton.com. The best ball rankings for the underdog best ball drafts that are up and running, those are available to all the levels starting at $2.99. But if you want access to a lot of the information that we discuss here in our team previews, our team profiles, our returning production database, our stat projections, all from CFB Winning Edge, those are available to our C2C Winning Edge and all 22 tier members. So today we will be discussing the number 26 team in our preseason CFB Winning Edge team strength power rankings, the NC State Wolfpack. But before that, we are going to get into some fall camp news, and we are shifting our focus just a little bit, or at least changing up, how much emphasis we put on fall camp news versus the team previews. For the most part, as we previewed very in-depth the last 25 shows or so, we have spent the vast majority, if not the entire time of our Good Morning College Football episodes on those team previews, and they would be 35, 45 or more minutes. Now, as fall camps are open across the country, just about everybody in college football has hit the field for at least day one of the 2024 season, the prep, the 30 days or so leading up to that first game. We're going to see and have to discuss more news items as they come across. So on our most recent episode, when we discussed number 25 Utah, it was the first 25 minutes or so was spent for fall camp news. Don't be surprised if in this episode or in others to follow, that stretches into the first 30 minutes or so. So if you're here only for NC State, do keep that in mind. But hopefully we'll find some information to pass along that will be valuable to everyone as you're looking ahead to the 2024 college football season, which begins in just 22 days. Week 0 kicks off in a little over 3 weeks from while we're recording Friday morning, August 2nd. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about Ohio State, which hit the field for day one of its spring practice in Columbus on Thursday. Dan Hope and Andy Anders of 11 Warriors put together several great pieces recapping the day, which was available to both media members and fans who paid for attendance to that practice on Thursday. Reporters were allowed to watch the entire practice, which, as we discussed a little bit in our last episode and have before, somewhat rare, especially as we get a little closer to the season. That certainly won't be allowed just about anywhere. But at least as far as day one goes, Ohio State opened the doors to everyone, and there are 4 practices in Columbus this fall that will be open to paying fans. So Jeremiah Smith, the freshman wide receiver, of course, was generating a lot of hype this spring. He's already taking reps with the number 1 wide receiver unit and did have some good moments in day 1 of fall camp. But it was Carnell Tate who was really the star of the show, according to Anders and Hope. Also, some similar thoughts put forth by Cameron Teague Robinson of The Athletic. But Tate, according to 11 Warriors here, quote, looked as good as any player on the field on Thursday as he made several impressive catches throughout the day, including one leaping grab where he skied over a defensive back to snag the ball on a high throw to the sideline from Will Howard. Other players mentioned as standouts among the wide receiver group included Smith, Brandon Ennis, Kojo Antwi, and a freshman walk-on Dorian Williams was also mentioned by 11 Warriors as impressing in day 1. The quarterback position, of course, the competition between Will Howard and Devin Brown is ongoing. According to Hope and Anders, there were, quote, no standouts at quarterback, and, quote, each Buckeye signal caller showed some inefficiencies intermixed with some good play. Devin Brown showed the most consistency, according to this pair, though they also said he didn't have any highlight reel moments, but both he and Howard flexed their running ability during drills and certain periods in the practice. Reports say that Julian Sayin, the true freshman, may have had the best overall throw of the day, but also as a true freshman, expectedly had some freshman moments, including multiple fumbled snaps, according to those reporters for 11 Warriors. Cameron Teague Robinson of The Athletic said that, quote, head coach Ryan Day, said he plans to run split field sessions for the first 4 practices of camp before getting things rotated down more at quarterback. So the first week or so of spring practice, probably not going to offer much clarity. I wouldn't be surprised if a starter is not named for a little bit, but we will, of course, pass along any information as it comes to us. But one thing that Robinson did note, he said it's obvious that Howard is feeling more settled in the offense after spring and summer. So most expect that Will Howard, the transfer from Kansas State, is going to be the starter for the Buckeyes this season when they open against Akron. But Devin Brown still in the mix. For Texas, Joe Cook of Texas Insider put together a depth chart, how the Longhorns lined up at just about every position. We focus primarily on the offensive side of the ball here. To no one's surprise, Quinn Ewers took the first snaps at quarterback with Arch Manning backing up. At running back, C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue were first in line. Trey Wisner, Jarrett Gibson, and Christian Clark were in the second group. At wide receiver, the first, the opening trio was Jonte Cook at the field wide receiver spot, DeAndre Moore in the slot, and Isaiah Bond, the transfer from Alabama, starting at the boundary. The second group, in that same order, we had Ryan Wingo, Matthew Golden, and Silas Bolden. And at tight end, Gunnar Helm took the first snaps, then Juan Davis and Amari Niblack to follow. So the way that those opening drills, periods of practice for Texas lined up a little bit different than how our team profile depth chart projections are laid out. We will, of course, keep up with practice reports, keep up with who is taking those number one reps and make adjustments. But also, this is the only area in our team profiles and our player ratings-based projections where a little opinion comes in. So I'm expecting there to be some movement with that Texas wide receiver group, but I'm going to let, of course, the beat reporters who do such a great job covering these teams and the coaches, who are putting out these groups on the practice field. I'm going to let them guide it ultimately. But as an example, right now, we do have Amari Black penciled in as our starting tight end projected in our Texas starting lineup and depth chart projections. But if he continues to take third or second team snaps, be second or third in the rotation at that group, then I'm going to have to move somebody else into that top spot. Also, with DeAndre Moore taking number one reps, that's something to consider because he's not currently listed as a starter the way that we do it. But as far as who was standing out among that group, it was Silas Bolden, the transfer from Oregon State. This is practice one a couple of days ago that we're discussing here reportedly, including a post from Jeff Howe of Horns 247, who highlighted Bolden as just making a couple of really eye-popping plays, some great catches. Howe also noted that Matthew Golden worked in the slot and outside, so worked at two different positions. Moore, who he says ended spring practice as the number one slot receiver, worked primarily outside on Wednesday, so was first in line at the slot, according to Cook of Texas Insider. But Howe noted, did rotate and actually played seemingly more on the outside in that first practice. So, not necessarily expecting these players to be locked into a certain role, at least just yet. At Arizona, Wildcat Authority and Jason Shear passed along a lot of news and notes. Most of those of you out there are probably interested in an update on Ted McMillan, the All-American, maybe best receiver in college football, who worked on the side, according to reports in early practices this week. According to Shear, McMillan did some unique exercises with his foot and ankle that looked like they were working on flexibility and overall strength. Brett Brennan, the head coach of the Wildcats, said after practice one, quote, "That's in the hands of our medical staff, strength and conditioning staff, and our doctors. They all have a very clear plan for him, and he's making great progress. We are very optimistic with how it looks." Continuing on and quoting here, these passed along from Shear, said, "We'll always do what's best for the player. I don't want to rush a player into playing. Those decisions are not coaching decisions ever. Those are medical decisions and player decisions, family decisions." So there's a little bit of growing concern that Ted McMillan may not be, fully available at the beginning of the season. But maybe a little too early to panic. But there was reporting on Thursday, Michael Lev of the Arizona or Tucson.com reported that McMillan did some 100-yard half sprints and that, quote, "there's no timetable for his return." That particular phrasing is a little bit worrisome to me personally. I know that there have been some references from other folks in, sort of discussing this Arizona situation to Rob Gronkowski and how he was severely limited by injury late in his career at Arizona and then, of course, in the NFL. So hopefully McMillan's going to be back fully healthy and we're going to get to see him put together an excellent junior season and potentially become one of the top wide receiver picks in next spring's NFL draft. But as of right now, he's not fully participating in practices, according to reports. Some others were held out of early practice for Arizona. Wendell Moe dealing with a lower leg injury, according to Shear. Takario Davis, the all-conference corner, was also sidelined. Traden Stukes, Kevin Darton, JT Hand, for undisclosed reasons. According to Shear, none of those seem to be serious, so hopefully they will be back and fully healthy relatively quickly. But one player is not going to be available for the 2024 season. Projected left tackle starter Raymond Pulido. Undisclosed reasons as of yet, but according to Brett Brennan, not going to be fully healthy, or excuse me, not going to be available this season. Not sure if it's an injury issue or something else. Two other notes from Shear. Kean Burnett, the tight end, former high school teammate with McMillan and quarterback Noah Fafita. If you're still waiting on Burnett to break out at the college level, maybe there's a little bit of hope, according to the day one practice report. According to Shear, Burnett looked like a completely different tight end. Quote, his confidence level seems way up, and Fafita said the same thing after practice. Last season, Burnett knew he was only going to play so much, but it feels like he has a new confidence because he's going to get a very real chance. Also, this time of year, players sometimes will drop off the roster, like Pulido, perhaps. Some others will pop up in maybe unexpected places. Linebacker Jared Small, who began his career at LSU last year, had a pretty productive season at Tulane, is now on the Arizona roster and expected to, I would think, contribute at the linebacker position. Moving on at Louisville, Matthew Magavich of Louisville Cardinals on SI. And this note has made the round, certainly in CFF circles. There's a lot of interest in who's going to emerge as the top target in that Louisville offense. And according to Magavich, who noting here the first 11 on 11 period of day one for the Cards, reading here from the piece said, Tyler Shuck was in at quarterback, obviously, with Maurice Turner getting the first reps at running back. Colin Lacey, Ja'Cory Brooks, and Chris Bell were the first receivers in. Later on, he says, an important note with the offensive skill position players, Louisville rotated a lot. It seemed that after every 2 or so snaps, new guys circled in. The first 11 on 11 is where the offense had their most success on the day. And this is the key piece that people are latching onto. Quoting from Magavich here, Shuck and Brooks are seemingly developing a close bond, as the latter had a couple of good plays during this period, and it appears Brooks is emerging as Shuck's go-to target. So Lacey put up the huge numbers at South Alabama. So early on in the preseason, a lot of expectations that he was going to be maybe able to carry over that success into being that wide receiver one for Louisville. Most recently, Bell has gotten the most buzz and some offseason discussions and previews. And in practice one, it's Brooks that is getting the most action. If you remember this time last year, it took a little while for everything to work itself out. So maybe don't jump on Brooks just yet, but it's always good to take note of who's getting a lot of action with the first team quarterback early in spring camp. So do with that what you will from a fantasy perspective. At BYU, some unfortunate news. Jay Drew of Deseret News there covering the Cougars had a couple of injury updates. Linebacker Ben Bywater, unfortunately, is medically retiring. There have been a handful of medical retirements across the country that we do make note of in our team profiles. Bywater so far has been the most impactful player to retire from football in the last few days that we've seen, but there are others that will continue to be updated as we get that information. Drew also reported that running back LJ Martin, quote, is not participating in contact drills and quite likely will not be available to play in BYU's first 3 or 4 games. games. So Martin apparently was not made available to reporters, which Drew said is usually a sign that there's some sort of injury that they're dealing with. Kalani Sitake, the head coach, was quoted as saying LJ was out there. Yeah, he was practicing. We are rotating quite a bit with him and Miles Davis. We want to see what a few of the other players can do as well. Drew mentioned that Hinckley Rapati, the senior who missed all of 2023 with a knee injury, was the primary ball carrier in the team session that was taking place when reporters were available there. He's also able to break off some long runs. But Rapati said he got a lot of work because, quote, and this is from Drew passing this along, LJ is recovering right now, and so we would love to have those guys back. But we got to make sure those guys are fully back. There is no need to put pounding on those guys and taxing their bodies and stuff like that. As long as we get them back healthy for the season, that's the important thing. So a little bit vague, quote from his teammate there. But Jay Drew, who does an excellent job covering BYU, which does generally give pretty good access, noting that LJ Martin may not be available for as much as the first month of the season. So do keep that in mind. And at Houston, Joseph Duarte of the Houston Chronicle noted that quarterback Donovan Smith, who was held out for the majority of the spring, he had a shoulder surgery over the offseason. Duarte said, quote, showed some zip on the ball throughout practice. Head coach Willie Fritz was quoted as saying, this was good for him to get out there. He didn't get reps like this in spring ball. That was the first time he did real live 7-on-7. I was very impressed with him. Duarte pointed out a true freshman who's getting some buzz and making some noise in early fall camp practices. He says, buy stock in freshman Kobe Young, the 4-star signee from New Orleans. Duarte, reading here from the piece, says, Young made several nice plays, including a diving catch, as Smith lofted a pass to the left corner of the end zone. Fritz, quoted here in the piece, said, I thought he had some really nice catches for us. Fritz also was quoted when asked about younger players seeing early playing time. Quote, if they are good enough to play for us this year, they'll play this year. We'll play guys. Also, Fritz singled out Stephon Johnson, who had some success in one-on-one drills as a performer, in early practices. A few other quick notes before we move on to NC State. UTSA announced that linebacker Martavius French, who is a starter, has been suspended from all team activities due to allegations of personal misconduct. We haven't moved French from our depth chart projections just yet. Want to see how that fully plays out, or if he's going to be maybe dismissed, or if there's going to be a length of suspension. The way his rating works, it doesn't really affect things if we were to remove him and add someone else to the starting lineup. So that's partly why we're waiting. A few injury updates from elsewhere across the country. At Virginia, there are a couple of likely contributors on the defensive side of the ball who are going to be out for the year. At Maryland, a potential starting offensive lineman is going to be out for the year. At Georgia, a little bit banged up on the defensive line, including projected starter and potential contributor. So a couple of things to watch there for the national championship contending Bulldogs. Nathan Geese of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal reported that 2 Texas Tech projected offensive line starters have missed practice and were sidelined with lower body injuries. Following up a note from Wednesday where we discussed practice 1 at Wake Forest, and Cameron Levins-Dubrow of Demon Deacons Digest noted that Michael Kern was taking first team reps. Well, in the following practice on Thursday, I believe, or maybe it was actually Wednesday, the day that we recorded, said that Bachmeier got, quote, all the work with the ones. Actually, that was Tuesday, so we had reported it, or passed along the report that was a little bit out of date. So apologies there. But it sounds like at Wake Forest, both of those players are going to get some first team reps this fall before things really shake out. And then one other note that not necessarily specific to the team that he covers, but Stephen Igo of Hoist the Colors, which is an East Carolina site on the 247 Sports Network, passed along just, or put together something that makes me think a little bit more about how is college football actually going to change on the field this year. There's a lot of discussion, of course, about the communication between coaches and players on the field now with the headsets in the helmets. But also some of the rules were changed so that practices could be held during the summer. And I go talking to head coach Houston at East Carolina, in his day one sort of press conference afterwards, passing along here, he said, quote, "With the rules the way they were, we practice all summer. We were on the field 2 days a week in June, 3 days a week in July. We're allowed 2 hours a week with a ball if coaches are out there. The kids can get out there on their own also. We have practice all summer. Offensively and defensively, we've installed the schemes multiple times now. This is just another install. We started over today. Today was install 1 for the offense, install 1 and 2 for the defense, and then progress on." So just something, anytime I see a little bit of more in-depth discussion on something like this, it piques my interest just a little bit. And it might not sound like much on paper, an hour or two, a couple of days a week. But and the fact that they're installing for a second or third time, that certainly takes time. But I do wonder if those practices from the summer help sort of speed up the install process. And maybe, early on in week one, we talk about, or, week one of practices, but in week one games as well, you hear, oh yeah, it's a little sloppy and the defense is ahead of the offense and all that. And the defense is going to have these extra practices too. But I don't know. I wonder if the communication and the additional practice is going to help sort of speed up the install process early on in the season. So maybe these offenses are clicking a little bit earlier. Also, for a long time, you think of freshmen who didn't enroll early, maybe were a bit behind, or transfers that didn't show up until the summer were a bit behind. I think these practices kind of help get those guys acclimated quicker than ever, potentially. So I don't know, curious to see. Not sure it's going to be a huge difference maker one way or the other, but just another example of how things are changing a little bit, and there could potentially be some impacts to how that carries over onto the field once the games kick off. So that is our fall camp news recap updates piece, and we're going to shift focus now to discuss NC State. And the Wolfpack have a posted regular season win total of 8.5, according to DraftKings this morning. According to the odds makers there in the market, NC State is 22nd in odds to win the national championship. 130-1 were those odds as of this morning. NC State tied tied at 24th best odds to make the college football playoff at 5-1, and the Wolfpack are 5th to win the ACC at plus 700 or 7-1, behind Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and Louisville. But NC State, a little bit of a trendy ACC championship peak. A little bit of a trendy ACC championship pick. I've seen some national media outlets kind of expecting NC State to make a run maybe in what looks like a fairly open ACC title race. There's no dominant team, even though Florida State coming back is the preseason favorite according to the media, because certainly lost some key pieces from last year's team, as we discussed in length earlier in our preview series. They're not an overwhelming favorite. Clemson is definitely in the mix. Miami looking better. Louisville, we discussed SMU and North Carolina, who our projections are higher on than most. So there are a lot of teams that could contend, and NC State, I think, is pretty well positioned, in part because Dave Doran and his coaching staff really revamped the roster on the offensive side of the ball. Specifically, we should see that unit take a big step forward. NC State was a top 20 defense last season, and though there are certainly some key pieces that they'll have to replace, probably are going to be able to play, you would expect, a similar level of defense moving forward. But the expectations are there's a little bit of a range there for the Wolfpack this season. Other preseason projection models and power ratings, also national media outlets that have particular analysts do preseason or certain points in the off season, post-spring and post-spring portal rankings. They go as high as 13th. Mark Schlabach of ESPN.com had the Wolfpack 13th in his power rankings at the end of spring practice. Andy Staples of On 3 had NC State at number 16. Stuart Mandel of The Athletic has NC State 21st. The Wolfpack also 21st in the EA Sports College Football 25 power rankings. And number 24 at the Sporting News, number 25 with Athlon Sports. So all of those are more of the opinion-based analyst who's taken a look at all the context, and a big piece of it is improvement on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of those folks mentioned that, but also a very manageable schedule, which we'll dig into as well. On the computer side of things, and obviously we have NC State as number 26. That's right along with Beta Rank also has the Wolfpack 26. ESPN's Football Power Index has NC State at number 28, as does Kelly Ford and the K Ford ratings. And then SP Plus, ESPN and Bill Connolly's projection model on the low end, but not a major outlier, with NC State 29th. So a lot of reason for the optimism specifically is the schedule. And NC State has a tough neutral site matchup with Tennessee in Charlotte, also plays Clemson on the road early on, but very importantly, a lot of the teams with the highest expectations in the ACC this season, including Florida State, Miami, Louisville, and Virginia Tech, are not on the schedule for the Wolfpack. So let's take a look at how last season came together for NC State. Going to share my screen and pull up our CFB Winning Edge team profiles. So NC State number 26, as you can see in our overall team strength power rankings. In the middle of the page here, once you go under all the roster and talent info, we have our schedule section with the projections, our 3 different projection models, and a lot of the numbers that we use that go into those. But down at the very bottom, 2023 results for the Wolfpack, of course, finished 9-4, 6-2 in the ACC. Very impressive overall. Great back half of the regular season with a 5-game winning streak and mostly dominant performance down the stretch. Early on, NC State, for the most part, with the exception of being able to get past Virginia when the post-game win expectancy number was 24%, according to collegefootballdata.com. So if you were to replay that game 100, 1,000, however many times, and have the same advanced box score, the same numbers at the end of the game, you would have expected the Wolfpack to lose that game about 3 out of 4 times. Nevertheless, found a way to win that one. Otherwise, in the first half of the season, games basically went according to what the box score would have suggested. 98% against UConn, 0% against Notre Dame, 100% against VMI, the FCS opponent. Then Virginia, we mentioned, close game against Louisville, 13-10, but the post-game numbers show that Louisville outplayed NC State significantly in that matchup. Get back on the right track with Marshall. Again, close final score, but the numbers overwhelmingly in NC State's favor. And then Duke, deservedly beat NC State there. But Clemson, 81%, very impressive. 97% against Miami, very impressive. And then 100%, 99 and 99 against, this is the toughest portion of the schedule and a very difficult stretch for NC State. If this was the schedule this year, we'd say, yeah, they're probably going to be an underdog against Notre Dame. That Louisville game probably going to be a toss-up. They'll be favored everywhere else. If they get to 4-3, that would be maybe a little bit disappointing, but within the realm of possibility. And then the schedule really gets tough. Didn't matter last season for NC State. They really turned it on in the second half of the season. In the bowl game, ran into Avery Johnson and Kansas State, and only would have won that game 27% of the time, according to the post-game numbers. But for the most part, the one-loss record pretty much lined up. This NC State team wasn't overly lucky or unlucky, wasn't overly outcoached, or didn't necessarily pull a rabbit out of the hat several times unexpectedly to win games that maybe you wouldn't expect based on those post-game numbers. So for the most part, things went according to plan, and especially with that impressive second half of the regular season. Overall, a very, very successful campaign for NC State, especially when you dig into some of the numbers where there was a lot of area for improvement on the offensive side of the ball. And these stats are some of the key numbers that go into our team performance ratings, where we look at only advanced statistics to give a grade on how well a team performed on the field. NC State was 35th in overall team performance, 17th on defense, but 83rd offensively. And as you can see, stat by stat here at some of our favorites, against FBS opponents only in the regular season only, NC State ranked 72nd in scoring offense, 99th in yards per play, 81st in points per drive, according to Brian Fremeau of bcftoys.com. And those numbers are adjusted for garbage time. They were 93rd in yards per pass attempt, 97th in success rate, and 91st in the EPA per play equivalent that we use from collegefootballdata.com. They call it PPA. But the best of those numbers were outside, worse than FBS average. Defensively, a much different story. Scoring defense, top 25 in the country, 21st in points per drive, 15th in EPA or PPA per play, outside the top 30, but not bad in either yards per pass attempt or success rate. The biggest area potentially for improvement is yards per play allowed, but on net, this team was somewhat mediocre, quite honestly. 52nd in scoring margin, 80th in net yards per play. Actually ended up under below zero in that number, with a negative yards per play on net. Net points per drive, 52nd nationally, 69th in yards per pass attempt on net, again below zero there. 61% in net success rate, 47 in EPA margin. So the game by game results went mostly according to plan, and NC State played its best against its toughest portion of the schedule. But if you really dig into the numbers, a lot of areas for improvement, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And fortunately, as you can see here in our projected offensive depth chart, a lot of incoming transfers. That blue color indicates players on the offensive side of the ball expected to make some immediate impacts. But before we fully move ahead to this year's projections, let's take a quick look at our returning production database, also from CFB Winning Edge, where you can sign up at campus2canton.com as a C2C Winning Edge or all 22 tier member. But last season, passing offense, and there was a little bit of, the quarterback situation wasn't super steady. MJ Morris and Brennan Armstrong both made starts. Morris ended up preserving a redshirt year before transferring to Maryland, bringing in Grayson McCall, who himself didn't play a full season, but overall better numbers than either Armstrong or Morris. completed more than 2/3 of his passes, a little bit short of 2,000 yards, but 8.6 yards per pass attempt. Definitely a step in the right direction. 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Not the greatest season from McCall. It's been 2 or 3 years since we saw McCall at his best at Coastal Carolina, but hopefully we'll get a fully healthy season, which we haven't seen in 2 seasons. And McCall will get back and help this NC State offense. The rushing offense was a major issue. Armstrong actually led the Wolfpack with 665 yards and 7 touchdowns. All-American true freshman KC Concepcion was actually the leading rusher among non-quarterbacks, which isn't great. And your top running back last season, Kendrick Raphael, 311 yards and a touchdown. Not surprisingly, especially after running backs Delbert Mims III, Michael Allen, and Jordan Houston all transferred out. Not a surprise that Jordan Waters was a priority incoming transfer at Duke. He had over 800 yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground. So hopefully he will solidify that position and be able to really boost the rushing numbers as a whole here for the Wolfpack. Mentioned Concepcion, who just had an incredible true freshman season, led the team with over 100 targets, 71 catches, 839 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Honestly, the one good thing that NC State really did on offense last season was find ways to get Concepcion the football. Hopefully that will continue, but much like the running back room, wide receiver, with some incoming and tight end as well, with some incoming talent and experience and production, hopefully be in a position to put up better numbers on the whole. Justin Joly at UConn was a receiving weapon. He seems like a perfect fit for offensive coordinator Robert Anae and the way that he utilizes that position. Wesley Grimes has been on the cusp of a breakout for a while. Would have been the second leading receiver in terms of yards for NC State last season and touchdowns, 339 yards and 4 scores, over 17 or right at 17 yards per catch and 16.3 yards average depth of target. Shows that Grimes can really stretch the field. That should be valuable. Dakari Collins coming back, some others in the mix as well. But the addition of Joly and Grimes hopefully take a little bit of pressure off of Concepcion and will help him continue to make big plays and consistent production for this NC State offense. 3 full-time starters return. Jacarius Peak was a little bit of a part-time starter, mostly at right tackle. They bring in Zeke Correll from Notre Dame. He is a double-digit starter. So pretty solid group there returning, despite losing Dylan McMahon, an 11-game starter. Derek Eason started 5 games. Lyndon Cooper transferring out after starting 5 games. So NC State on the offensive side of the ball, when you take into account transfers coming in, ranks 59th in our adjusted offensive returning production numbers. If we were just talking raw returning production, just who's coming back, who's not from last year, the Wolfpack would have been 91st. Defensively, the numbers very similar. 68th in adjusted defensive returning production, would have been 65th in raw terms last season. The loss of Peyton Wilson is huge. 140 tackles last season, 22 pressures, 17.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 picks. Just an incredible linebacker, one of the best in the country. Also lost Jalen Scott, a fellow starting linebacker who had the second most tackles from last year's unit. Shaheem Battle at corner, Savion Jackson on the defensive line. So key pieces of last season's defense moving on at all 3 levels. But a lot of experience returns, 3 of the top 5 tacklers, 5 of the top 9 coming back. So decent building blocks there. The additions of a couple of experienced players in the secondary, KJ Martin, Donovan Kaufman could be certainly key to rebuilding that unit. The secondary was seemingly the biggest priority in the transfer portal for NC State. But getting back to our team profiles and how this team stacks up, again, looking at the recruiting numbers how the different recruiting sites and their average player rating at each position shake out. The wide receiver room is certainly a major strength in terms of just the raw talent on hand. And usually when I say raw talent, I'm referring to those average 247 sports composite ratings where NC State ranks 15th. The Rivals ratings even a little bit better. They're top 12 nationally. When we adjust for experience and career production, that number takes a little bit of, falls down just a little bit down the line, 45th nationally. But with Concepcion, one of the best players in the country, and more around him this season, seems like we're a little bit low maybe in those position strength ratings, again adjusted for experience and production. The quarterback position, kind of the opposite. Grayson McCall wasn't a highly rated player coming out of high school, but has a ton of experience, put up a lot of production at Coastal Carolina. So he's 13th in terms of quarterback starters in our individual player ratings, our video game ratings, as we call them. They're not exactly the same, but set up quite similarly to the EA Sports College Football 25 ratings. Top 15 in position strength at the quarterback position. Tight end position in very good hands based on experience and production with Joly coming in. The offensive line looks good. Top 30 in position strength, 32nd in that raw talent number. So 49th in average 247 rating on the offensive side of the ball, but 16th when we adjust for experience and production, and that's right there in line with our roster strength numbers. But if we were just to take those average position strength ratings, so it's a little bit of a different rating. But this is a team that can has improved upon just its raw talent profile because it's brought in a lot of experienced players who've been productive in the past on the offense. That hopefully will pay off to better numbers overall. The defense is right there among the top 30 nationally in terms of average recruiting ratings across the board. A little less experienced, the linebacker core, losing Wilson, that certainly took that average rating down quite a bit, 93rd overall, 17th in the ACC, but I expect that with experience, those NC State linebackers got a pretty good track record of success at that position. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they're able to rise in those rankings fairly soon. And then maybe the front end, top 10 defensive line in position strength, top 20 in the secondary. So as long as that linebacker core improves, they should be in pretty good shape on both the front end and the back end, and it should, I think, carry into a very competitive season overall. Quick look at the depth chart projections on the offensive side of the ball. Those transfers coming in, McCall, Waters, Grimes, and Joly, expect they all will have an impact. Noah Rogers, also a transfer coming in from Ohio State, didn't play much with the Buckeyes, but a lot of rave reviews. He certainly could challenge for a starting position. Hearing some good things about true freshman Terrell Anderson, but also the incoming freshman Christian Zachary and Keenan Jackson as well. So that NC State unit should be improved overall again with incoming transfers, solid recruiting class, and some experience returning, especially on the offensive line. Feel like that unit has a chance to be, not just improve to FBS average, but maybe become a top 40, maybe even push into the top 25 type offense. And if they do, this NC State team absolutely, I think, is going to be competing for an ACC championship. Defensively, Aiden White is the star at corner. Getting him back is key. Getting Devin Boykin back and healthy would be a big boost. That added experience through the transfer portal in the secondary should be good as well. But Devin Van, huge level of production last season should really help solidify that defensive line. There is experience at the linebacker core. I probably misspoke earlier, but the loss of Wilson is just so big. I mean, he was way over a 100 rated player. Our numbers don't stop at 99 like the EA Sports video game. They go into the 100s, and like Van, Wilson was way up there as far as individual player rating. So Betty and Brown, those guys coming back, played a lot, but just not quite as productive as Wilson was, and that had an impact. So how does it shake out as far as the game-by-game projections? We mentioned that the odds makers have the regular season win total of 8.5. Getting to 9 wins absolutely is a reasonable goal, and I think a fair expectation. And our projections really like NC State, have the Wolfpack favored in 9 regular season games, the 3 in which they aren't, Tennessee, Clemson, and North Carolina, all within a touchdown, so all within striking distance. The problem is, at least the way that we project it, because we add up those convert those projected point spreads to a projected win percentage, like we were talking second order wins earlier, add up all those percentages of a win. So give NC State, 0.95 wins for that week 1 game against Western Carolina, 0.46 wins in that coin flip matchup against Tennessee, 0.94 for Louisiana Tech, go on and on. That's how we get to 8.03. So there are some games, certainly every matchup here is winnable for NC State. A 12-0 regular season is certainly within the realm of possibility, I think. But there are enough matchups that are just within reach for the opponents. 57% at Cal. That's a game you would expect NC State to be able to beat Cal. They're going to have a talent edge. The defense probably matches up very well, I think, but it's a long way out there. It's a new opponent. And Cal maybe, could surprise a little bit. So that game probably projected a little closer than most might expect, and that draws down the win percentage a little bit. Similar for Georgia Tech, another road trip. Georgia Tech, one of the most experienced offenses in the country, should be, I think, one of the more exciting offenses in the ACC this season. So that game, maybe projected a little closer than you might expect, with NC State only favored by about a field goal. Even the ones where they're double-digit favorites, Wake Forest, Stanford, Duke, you get into those win projections being more 0.7, 0.65, 0.8. Those are just not guaranteed, and so that drags down the number just a little bit. We do have, this is our traditional way of projecting win totals. We've done it since, we've done it this way since 2020, but then we've started tracking how do we compare against the odds makers every season since 2021. We've got a 60.4% success rate. We've been better than 55% every season. So I feel good about that for the most part. But if we were to try something new that we're testing this year, a win total projection, where we're trying to improve a little bit on the extremes, because we're basically going to be under every win total on the very high end. We're going to be over every win total on the very low end. So it's not elegant, but we're doing a test this season based on how many games each team is a projected favorite. NC State being a favorite in 9 games and an underdog in 3. If we do a 10% bonus for each of those, add 0.10 wins for each game in which a team is a favorite, and subtract 0.10 for each in which they're an underdog, that would get a plus 0.6 for NC State. So our new projected win total would be over the 8.5 at 8.6. So we're officially under this season for the Wolfpack. That doesn't have anything to do with my opinion. Personally, I think NC State really is poised to be a 9-win team. But so if we adjust it in our new sort of test win total projection, we would be on the over but for official record-keeping purposes this season, we are technically on the under. And it could happen that way. I mean, this NC State team, I think the path is there to 9 or more wins. The path is there to an ACC Championship Game appearance, maybe even win the league. But also, there are some matchups that maybe are a little bit more difficult, maybe a couple of trouble spots where NC State could end up losing a game or two that you wouldn't expect, get upset once or twice, especially if Grayson McCall has some more injury issues like he has the last couple of years. If the offense just doesn't quite improve to the level that we expect, there certainly are some areas where this Wolfpack team could just kind of not realize maybe its full potential, not fully break through to that championship level. But we shall see. And that today is going to do it for us for our NC State preview. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us during that 25 minutes or so of fall camp news. If you were just here for the NC State preview, that's going to be more of the norm moving forward. So if you join us on Monday, we will have a preview. We'll try to make sure that we don't rush through it too much. But as more and more fall camp news comes out, injury reports, depth chart information, all that good stuff, we want to pass along the most important pieces of that as well. So you can always keep track of any updates that we do based on that news, and a lot that we don't even discuss here. We're in there looking for projected offensive lines. We're looking for injuries to backups and all that sort of stuff where we just don't have time to discuss it today. If you want to see how all that plays out, our team profiles at CFB Winning Edge are the best place to do so. So if you want access to those, as well as our returning production database, which we showed here, our stat projections, which are available as well, should come in handy for your CFF leagues that are drafting now, DFS in the future, those best ball leagues at Underdog. We have a little bit different way of looking at it, where we fully try to remove opinion as much as possible. Take a look at the last 3 seasons based on numbers only for the team, the head coach, and the offensive play caller, and don't mess with it too much. Just sort of see what the numbers say and compare those to the Campus to Canton CFF rankings or other projections that have a little bit more context, do take a little bit more opinion into it. I think that neither is a perfect way to do it. It's I think good to get both perspectives and then be able to analyze personally where maybe you see things going, but based on numbers only, based on some other factors as well. So if you haven't already, we very much would appreciate you checking that out at campus2canton.com as a C2C Winning Edge or all 22 tier member. But you can also, of course, subscribe for as little as $2.99 per month to campus2canton.com, get access to content written on the site, as well as tools and rankings for CFF, Devi, C2C, all of that great stuff. And then, of course, if you haven't already, please do like this video. Please do subscribe to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel, where you get us 3 times a week, as well as other great shows on the network. So hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and we will be back on Monday for Good Morning College Football. Until then, take care.